I'm Andrew Lewis, and I'm the Vice President and Chief Student Services Officer at Wheeling University, and this is DingoTalk.
You wanna know by now. You wanna know by now. You wanna know by now. You wanna know. You wanna know. You wanna.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is Andrew Lewis, Vice President of Student Services. That you gave a very long one. I don't know how if I can do all that.
That's okay.
Andrew's going to do what we do every week. He's going to tell us about himself. We're going to take him all the way back to 2001 and why the decision to go to West Liberty. We'll probably cover there's a pretty important event that happens in the world his freshman year, talk about his experiences, and roll on from there. But Andrew, Ohio Valley kid, why West Liberty?
So, like academics wasn't for me. I didn't even know if I was going to go to college when I was in high school, but, I was a pretty decent runner. I ran cross country and track. It was my sport. It was my thing. I was a runner. I would, run all year round. There'd be 2 feet of snow. I'd be running. I had some pretty good success in high school with OVAC champion in a couple events in track, OVAC champion in cross country. I went to Junior Olympics and for nationals in cross country. So it was just something that kind of elevated my ability to go to college and kind of opened the doors a little bit more to what was next. I was looking at a couple different schools, Muskingum College, West Liberty, but ultimately I chose West Liberty. My dad is a graduate of West Liberty. I had 2 aunts that graduated from West Liberty. I was also recruited by a couple different schools to run. So I did get an athletic scholarship to West Liberty to run cross country and track. So that really kind of sealed the deal. And I knew that running was going to continue through college, and that was going to, get me to friends and get me to whatever I needed to do. And at that point, I wasn't even sure what major I was going to go into. When you're a freshman and a senior, you don't know what you're going to do the next day. Mm-hmm. So me thinking about what a major was or what I was going to do after college wasn't even a thought. I was fortunate enough that family members had gone to college, so I wasn't a first generation student, that my brother was in school at a high university. I knew that I didn't want a big school. My brother's experience at OU was good for him, but it wasn't for me. I'd gone down and visited, but I did not want to go to a college where I didn't know people. I really wanted to be able to find myself and figure out who I was as a person. Mm-hmm. And West Liberty kind of offered that to me. I knew that it was a small school. It was close enough to home that if I needed to come home or needed something from my family, that they would be close. I'm a twin, so I'm pretty close with my sister. I'm pretty close with my entire family. So knowing that they were, 26 miles away, essentially in Shadyside, Ohio, that I could get there if I needed to. So family going to West Liberty and cross country and track is why I chose West Liberty.
Now, how long did the cross country and track thing work out? Were you four years? 4 years?
I was. I ran all 4 years. I was 4.5 years at college. I took a red shirt 1 semester of cross country, and then I was a December 2005 graduate. So I ended my collegiate career, both academically and athletically. So I continued to run, and it was probably the greatest experience to be involved in a team. Mm-hmm. And have that closeness. I had some great teammates. Oddly enough, one of them is now my brother-in-law. He married my sister. They kind of got together after college, and he hit her up on Facebook, and then my sister's like, "Your friend RJ?" I mean, like, my team was very involved with my family. My parents would go to meets. We would have them to my house for dinners and things like mm-hmm. that. So it wasn't something, my parents were at, everything that they could be at. So it was important that they were all kind of, mixed together. But she reached out. She's like, your friend RJ. I was like, he was a great guy. And he was and still is a great guy. And Next thing I know, he's sitting on my couch Christmas morning, opening presents together. And they're still married to this day, so which is great. But you meet some people in college that you stick with and some you don't, but you appreciate the experiences that you had while you're there because they really shape and form you. And college is really, and now on the other side of it, college is really that opportunity that you do just kind of figure out who you are. And that
Well,
freshman year is crazy.
let's lead into that. So your freshman year is one hell of an experience, I guess. Obviously September 11th, 2001. You're a month into your freshman year. Do you anything you remember specifically? Is that a day that you
I
can
remember everything about that day. And I think that a lot of people will, always remember that. Similar to like our parents or older generation remembering when JFK was shot,
Mhm.
things like that. And I remember I had a few of my friends from high school that went to West Liberty as well. My friend Vanessa and I would always go get breakfast on the morning, and we were in her room at Hughes Hall. And I remember turning on the TV while we were waiting to go eat, and it came across the TV. But at the time, you thought it was like a part of a movie, or you just didn't think it was real.
Yeah.
So we turned it off, went to breakfast, and then I go to my music appreciation class with Professor Wiesner, and we just all find out about it. We kind of just shut down, and we leave the class. My room in Curtis Hall was where I lived, was kind of like the hub of the floor where everyone kind of hung out at. And we all just kind of sat in our room and watched it unfold. This was a time before cell phones. So, up at West Lib, there was no cell phone service. So I didn't have a cell phone. So calling my parents, which again dates me,
well, it's still spotty up there in them hills.
Right. You call your family to find out, how everyone's doing. I had friends who were in New York going to school, the same kind of thing. There was no Facebook, there was no social media. You had no way to find out how people were if it wasn't for, a landline calling your parents to find out from that friend's parents who live in Shady Side where they're at, and it just kind of, you took a moment. I had family members who worked in the government. He was supposed to be on a flight. We weren't sure if he was in the air, where he was. So we had that time to hold on. And again, you're in school for a month, of freshman. You don't have the ability to kind of like make great friends yet, but we had a really good group of guys on my floor that I lived on that we just kind of like hung out and stayed together and kind of just talked through it. And we had a memorial service in College Hall. A lot of students went. There were people who were affected, that were students, and it was just something that you'll never forget. And you don't, and you always think about that. And again, now working on the other side, some of the students weren't alive then. So they have no idea about it. And when you bring it up, it's just something that you'll always remember vividly. Remember seeing everything, how it was happening, how people reacted to it, and how it did change a lot of stuff. There was talk of planes coming through Wheeling and the Ohio County Airport. We're close to Pittsburgh, not far from Pittsburgh, so Pittsburgh was a hub for airplanes and things like that. So it was kind of worrisome, and everyone kind of just on a standstill for that time. It was something that, like I said, I'll never forget where I was and who I was with.
So more positive sides. What did you end up majoring in, and how did you get to that decision?
So I knew that I was a church camp kid. So I really liked going to church camp, and I liked to be involved as a counselor. So I relayed that back to education. So I decided that I was going to want to be a teacher. So elementary education was what I selected. Oddly enough, my father went into the same thing, but did not end up going to be a teacher. So I picked elementary education. And again, academics wasn't my, I didn't excel academically.
Mm-hmm.
I was a mediocre student, that freshman year, I was in remedial algebra because math is something that I struggle in still to this day. I don't deny it. I'm not ashamed of it. It's just part of who I am. So, I had to experience things a little bit differently to make sure that I could and wanted to do that again, because early on, I didn't even know if college was going to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe it was just going to be, not even to do it. I was going to go, my dad works in construction world, maybe go do that or trade or something. But luckily enough, I got into elementary education and I ended up getting a minor in special education as well. My sister is part of that. She has a learning disability. So I saw the struggles that my parents had gone through with her IEPs, her individual education plan, and knew how involved my mom was and knew the struggles that she had to get to make sure that my sister's accommodations were met. So I kind of wanted to be in that process and kind of help that. And once I got into the education field, in my classes, I loved it. I loved education law. I loved, oddly enough, like teachers, elementary reading or reading for elementary teachers, like little things like that was great. And I really enjoyed that. I can relate a lot of that now working in college, seeing how it can go back.
I don't know if I could imagine you as an elementary school teacher.
Right. So that was always like, could I do it? But again, I was able to get in with a good group of like, when you're same with any major, you get into a core content of classes and you get with the same group of people. So like I was with the same group towards the last 2.5 years, who really just made it enjoyable going to class. And a lot of people I still see, a lot of them are in education. A lot are maybe not, but I did my student teaching at Ritchie Elementary School and Wheeling Park. Okay. So I had those experiences and for education, you have to do so many observation hours. And I was fortunate enough to start at Ritchie and be there for maybe a year before I even started student teaching. So I had that opportunity to meet the students and to meet the teachers. So I felt very comfortable there to spend 6 weeks of, your life, really. And then Wheeling Park, I did for my special education. My supervising teacher was a West Lib grad, so I felt very comfortable there, and I felt very comfortable in that realm. And I was also still running. I was super involved. I ended up.
Yeah, what were some things you were involved in throughout your?
So I knew that I was kind of like a people person, I guess you could say. And I know, I know kind of like now I like to be in charge, like to be in the spotlight. I think we all kind of see that that's kind of where I'm at. But I got involved in being a resident assistant. So I, oddly enough, part of my role now is I oversee residence life, that whole department. And when I first applied to be an RA at West Liberty, I did not get it, which was kind of like, well, crap, I was a freshman. I wanted to get involved. It would be a good opportunity, help people with their experience, help students with their experience. So I didn't get it. It didn't deter me. I applied again and I got it. I was an RA for my last 2 years in freshman buildings, but I also was actively involved in student government. I became the student government president when I was a senior, which was a great opportunity because you really are involved in both aspects of the college world as a student and then some stuff on the administrative side. As president of student government, I was a student representative to the Board of Governors. So I spent monthly meetings with them. I had meetings with the college president. I was involved in curriculum development. I was involved with graduation ceremonies, homecoming events, things like that. So I saw both sides and it really made me start thinking a little bit about there's other things that people do at college, not just teach. So I saw that as maybe an opportunity, and being an RA, that was a great experience. I had really great people that I worked with when I was a student who really shaped me to where I'm at. And being as an RA with first year students, that was really important to me to be able to know how I went through things. Because when I was a freshman, there was like an RA wasn't existent. Like he was, no offense to him as a person, but he wasn't present. He didn't do like programming. He didn't do floor meetings. He didn't really get to know us. I maybe saw him once or twice. And I knew that that wasn't how it was supposed to be. So I wanted to change that experience. So I was able to get in there and I had some great people that were my residents that I really got to get involved with and kind of threw me into what was going to be my new career, essentially. And I remember my dad and I having a conversation about, well, what's next after graduation? And I was like, I don't want to leave. Like I didn't want to leave West Liberty, and it just wasn't, I just didn't. So I was like, well, why don't you look for a job up there? And essentially that's what I did. Right after I graduated, I went into full-time employment at West Liberty.
So so I interviewed Jerry, I interviewed Sam. Those are the student life people that I know well as
Yes.
you. How does one get into student life? Because it's not like you go to school and say, "Oh man, I want to be the RA advisor. I want to be student life. I want to," because you don't get a vacation. You
don't.
There's no weekends. There's Saturdays.
Right.
Saturdays are a great phone call.
Right. Early mornings. It's not something that you, very rarely will someone be like, I want to work in student services. I want to work in student life. You essentially fall into it, or you find it as a passion, and you find it's something that is going to be what you want to do in life. And that's being an RA, being in student government, helping out with enrollment and admissions events like open houses and tours. That got me into student life. That got me into realizing that you could make this a career, and just finding that niche that I think I kind of was able to create out of using my education background and also the experiences that I had to get me to where I wanted to go. I knew that it was, again, like you get into it and you don't know where you're going to go until you get into it, really to find out how that, start from the bottom in that totem pole and work your way up to see, can you get up to that top part or that top position? And I just did it. I worked hard. I applied, not knowing, because it's hard to go from undergrad straight into full-time employment at the same institution that you were just like hanging out, partying with people, because I like to have a good time when I'm allowed to have a good time. So being a person who was actively involved and had a great social life, knew that I had to do some learning, growing up to transition into that role. It's not easy for everyone. And I will be the first to say, I struggled at times with defining that line. My first supervisor, Marcella Snyder, who is probably one of my best mentors, who's still at West Liberty this day, who I still call on if I need advice or help. I probably gave her the hardest time because I was a young professional thinking I knew everything, knew how I was going to change the world. And I really needed to step back and find that line to being able to accept criticism, being able to accept advice, and how I can learn and grow from it rather than getting frustrated, mad, and walking away.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And it was good.
So I think that's a good place. We covered all West Lib. We covered the first job. We got to send it to Chambers because part 2 takes us to Bethany. We drive 6 miles over the hill.
Yeah. So I had some time after West Liberty. I went to Glenville State for 4 years. It was a long 4 years. Nothing against, but it was a long 4 years.
I think we'll just leave Glenville State there.
Glenville, West Virginia. So going away, Glenville was about 2.5. It's a little bit of a drive away. So I left family, I left friends. And when the opportunity came open at Bethany, I was like, I'm ready to make that next step. I was still kind of like at entry level, step up. I wanted to be a director. I wanted to supervise and get that. Oddly enough, when I applied at Bethany, I actually
that's where I'm gonna cut you off. I'm gonna cut you off right there, and we'll bring that out of part 2. Chambers General Store. If they don't have it, you don't need it. You can get it on a t-shirt. You can also get the Shroom Capital of the World shirt. I think it's the 3rd edition of that. Might be the 4th edition at this point. And the t-shirt is true. If they don't have it, you really don't need it. Andrew's been there. We're going to talk about everything Bethany. And when it comes to everything Bethany, Chambers is right in the middle. So if you're in the town of Bethany, stop in. I am Carla Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest, Andrew Lewis, Vice President of Student Affairs, Student Life.
That'll work.
Go somewhere in there. And we'll be right back.
You're watching another exciting episode of Dingo Talk, recorded deep in the hidden lair in Bethany, West Virginia. Or when you visit, make sure you stop by Chambers General Store. Grab one of our hot breakfast sandwiches made fresh all day. Don't forget the biscuits and gravy or one of the daily lunch specials. And if none of that trips your trigger, cold cut sub sandwiches and wraps made fresh all day to your order. Hey, and don't be the only alumni on the block that doesn't have the Chambers. If we don't have it, you don't need it t-shirt or the latest edition of the Bethany, West Virginia shroom capital of the world in the psychedelic green. Hey, now back to you, Carlo.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest, Andrew Lewis. He left off with 4 wonderful years in Glenville, West Virginia. Job opened up at Bethany, 6 miles from where he went to college and had his first job out of college. So how does that play out?
Well, I have known about Bethany prior to. We at West Liberty called them the Harvard on the Hill. I had a cousin who went, and of course I went to Bubba's, even when I was not quite of the appropriate age to go to Bubba's. And a funny story as to how I got into Bubba's, we knew that all Bethany students got in. And how do they get in? By showing their Bethany ID. So what did me and a couple friends do at West Liberty? We made fake Bethany IDs so we could get into Bubba's. And it worked.
So you made counterfeit Bethany IDs. I don't know how many people there's a lot of people aren't going to believe that story. I'm just going to.
It was like the randomest thing. We did it. We got in. We could go to Bubba's or whatever until the bouncer started being a West Liberty student who was on the track team at the same time. Was like, get out of here, Andrew. You're not. Nice try. So that ended. But anyway, so I knew that Bethany was there, and I knew that I wanted to get back to the Ohio Valley. I had my brother and my sister were getting into marriages, and kids were coming along the way. My grandma was, getting older, and I wanted to be close. So I applied actually for the director of student activities job. And I hadn't heard anything. And Jerry called me and he said, listen, I know that you applied for the director of student activities job, but the director of residence life job actually just came open. We haven't even posted it yet. And your resume looks more suited to that. Would you apply? Or would you be interested in that? I was like, absolutely. I'm ready for anything. So that's kind of how it happened. And I love Jerry. He's a great person. He's a great mentor. Again, I call him occasionally on things. And he called me like 9 o'clock one night. I was at Glenville. I think I was like walking on a treadmill, which doesn't happen anymore. But he's like, hey, you got some time? I'm like, sorry, sir. It's 9 o'clock at night. I'm not prepared for an interview right now. So let's set something up formally. So we set something up, and things kind of happened. I met with Jerry, I met with the team, I met with Mickey. I had some great connection with Mickey through her daughter, and some of my friends were friends, so I knew that. And I had met the vice president for Ecker, the provost. It all went well. I got the opportunity. They offered me the job, and I was like, I'm here, let's go. And Sam, who you have interviewed, started 2 weeks before I did. And during that time, both Sam's position and my position were live-on positions. So part of our compensation package was an apartment. So when I interviewed, I toured the apartment. I was like, this is a great apartment. It was in Campbell Village, compared to where I was living. It was a great apartment. I was like, this is great, everything. So Jerry and I are back, emailing back and forth about, start dates and all that kind of stuff. And I said something about my apartment, and Sam had started 2 weeks earlier, but where he was going to live wasn't ready yet. So they moved him into my apartment, and Jerry was like, what do you think about a roommate? I was like, listen, I don't know this Sam guy. I'm not too sure about that. I've never had a roommate, in my adult life. So I was like, no. So Sam ended up going to the Delt house and Delt Founders, and lived above there. and then I moved in and I started at Bethany. And Bethany is its own animal in a good and bad way. I walk in first day, I had to put my own
Chair
my desk
together.
chair together because the person before didn't. He broke it, and you can say why, but he
I
broke
won't.
it.
I will let
Yeah.
you know though that you were in my phone the entire time I was at Bethany as his name, not as
All right, I'll take it.
you would call for a problem and I would go, dude, you left like 4 years ago. Why are you? Oh, that's the phone. It's not.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
just the phone.
So
Go ahead.
what were some of your things? So you come in to run the RAs and run kind of the rooms and all the ins and outs that goes into that. How do you work your way? Because you get involved in Greek life. You kind of, as you said, Bethany is its own animal. You had kind of 8 arms doing a bunch of things. How does that play out?
I mean, in student affairs and student service, it's really like all other duties assigned. You do what you need to do to make the department work. Even back then when I started in 2013, there was short staff everywhere. You know what I mean? But I'm also the person, I think, because of my family and my parents' work ethics, that my work ethic is I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure that the job's done right. And knowing my previous years in higher ed, that students come first. So if there was a need that a student had, then I was going to deliver. Sam and I started at the same time, and Sam and I ended up becoming really good friends, and Jerry and Mickey and all of us were really good together. Hillary, you remember Hillary was there when I first started. She kind of transitioned from Greek life to Title IX, was kind of like really big. And then Greek life transitioned to Sam. I got involved as an advisor, but first I got on as director of residence life. That was my primary job. Met with the RAs, met some great RAs. I had great experience. I still talk to some of them. Kyle Rocky, still talk to him to this day. Still can't believe he's a father of twins. Blows my mind. He's probably going to be mad. He called me like a week ago, FaceTimed me. I didn't answer. If Rager called, he leaves me voicemails about like, how dare you not answer my call? Like, he's a great person.
Full dad mode,
and he's great.
Andrew, call me back when you get this voice message.
Exactly. How dare you? And the one thing with Rocky real quick is I missed his wedding because my husband was in someone else's wedding in North Carolina, so I couldn't go. And he's been married 4 or 5 years maybe, and he will never ever let me live that down. Every time, the voicemail was, Andrew, you missed my wedding and now you're not answering your phone, and that'll be always. But so I met some great RAs. I had some really good student leaders to work with. There wasn't really a staff besides the RAs and a graduate assistant.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time I was there, I had really good graduate assistants with Lauren Morris, Brittany and Kaylee and Kristen Ewing. Really had the opportunity, and I loved that we had graduate assistants because it was an opportunity for us to kind of teach and learn. Mm-hmm. They taught us some stuff, they learned some stuff, but it was really great to be able to kind of mold and shape them. But also I was able to give them the opportunity to kind of form their job positions, and every 2 years you essentially would get a new graduate assistant. So I was able to kind of let each one of them decide what their strengths were, so mm-hmm. that, if Lauren was great at programming, then she's going to do programming. And if maybe one of them wants to dabble in conduct, then we can add some conduct stuff. Or they want to get more to change the programming model or change how duty is done, then they can do that. And Jerry was great to allow me to do that, which is really important as now a mid-level professional, to be able to kind of pat your resume in a sense, so that that I knew at that point that I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep going, mm-hmm. keep going up to the higher ed chain to wherever it was going to take me, but I knew that I wanted to keep going. So Jerry really let me kind of do my thing. And there was probably times that he was like, that's the worst decision ever, but I still did it. And again, my whole thing is, if I make a mistake, then I make a mistake, but I'm going to learn from it and grow from it and figure out what I can do better not to make that mistake. And it's the same. Yes.
I want to point out, if Jerry was saying bad decisions, he canceled a fly fishing class that I was the only kid enrolled in. And I think that it was personal. I don't think he wanted to spend 4 hours a day for 3 weeks out in the Buffalo with me.
Well, you know what? That's probably true. Let's be honest.
I'm just saying. Also, we do have to make a correction. We are referring to about Dr. Sam Gooch. So that we
Listen,
Dr. Sam Gooch.
listen, I am so proud of that guy for doing it.
Mhm.
Sam and I both started the program at the same time. And I'm not shy about this. I only got involved because Sam did, and I didn't want Sam to have something I wasn't going to have. It was that like friendly competition kind of thing. So Sam did it, and I left Bethany while we were still kind of in the program. We had done our classwork, and it was dissertation time. Luckily, during class, Sam and I did our PhD coursework together through Gannon University. We had a cohort that we met in Cranberry and a couple times in Erie. So we were holding each other accountable, him holding me more accountable than anything, making sure that I'm getting the class, getting assignments done, and bouncing ideas off of. I spent a lot of time with Sam. Sam was a great person to bounce personal, professional things off of. And we would, even after I left Bethany, we would still kind of talk like, oh, how's your dissertation going? It was probably, I probably knew deep down that I wasn't going to fulfill it, only because it was difficult. I was going through some, right at the end, I was going through some personal things and some job changes, and then COVID hit. But when Sam told me that he was hunkering down and doing it, I was so happy to say that I know Sam and that I still do, and knew that he was going to do it. And I told him, I said, Sam, there was never a doubt in my mind that you weren't going to finish this. I knew that I had a chance that it may not, but it is weird if I see him to call him Dr. Gooch.
Dr. Gooch.
Dr. Gooch. But he's done some great things for himself, and he continues to do great things for himself. And I wish him nothing, and Sam's one of those people that, we would pick on each other, but in a good, positive way.
Yeah.
And we did have a really good working relationship, and Jerry and I had a good working relationship. We really had a good team. After Hillary left, we had Amber, and we had a couple other people in there, but Sam and I were the constant.
Yeah.
We were there together. He was 2 weeks before me, and it was, us. But I did get involved in Greek life. I became an advisor for Delta Tau Delta. Rocky and Casey Lindley were RAs, and at the time they were looking for an advisor. I didn't really have fraternity life when I was an undergrad at West Liberty. They do now. We had like one local fraternity, but it wasn't for me at the time. Again, it was my own inability to know the full depth of fraternity and sorority life because I didn't see it firsthand. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Let's see what this involves. So I ended up pledging, in a sense, and becoming a full Delta Tau Delta member, dues, conferences, all those kind of things. Because I also wanted to show my commitment to those students, that I was there for them. And well as anyone, the struggle that fraternity life can be at Bethany. It's great because of the history and the camaraderie and the brotherhood that those guys form. But the recruitment process and getting things done is difficult. The right way. And you've got 4 fraternities all vying for a small population of male students. So it was difficult, and there were low numbers, low pledge classes, but if you got a couple, you were happy. There were sometimes that you had large classes and sometimes you had small classes, but fraternity life really opened my eyes to that different kind of branch of student services, student affairs that I really hadn't seen before. And Sam took it over, and his whole thing was Greek life a little bit and student activities, but I was able to kind of see and help and get through that process, and see a different side of things. And again, like I still see those guys, I still talk to those guys. I think I came home a couple years and go back to the house and see people. And knowing for me that Delt was founded at Bethany, I think is so profound. Being able to go to the founder's house and have ritual and have all those things there where it all started was really, really great and really special. So I'm glad that I had that opportunity and kind of see that kind of go where it needed to go.
And then, so your time came to an end at Bethany. What led to the move, to the change, to the just the ability to move up? The position came open. You wanted to kind of take a stab at it. What got you to Wheeling?
So my time at Bethany, I was there for 6 years, and
Me too.
so again, like I met great people, had great interactions. While I was there, I was also promoted to assistant dean, which gave me a little bit more responsibility, allowed me to kind of, again, let's say pad my resume, but know that I was preparing myself for that next step. Oddly enough, Wheeling has had its ups and downs, and we are up. And when it was 2019, I had a phone call from someone at Wheeling in February that their dean of students position was going to be coming opened. They wanted a quick turnaround. Would I be interested? The job wasn't even posted. I was like, yes, that would be logically the next step. At the time, it was still Wheeling Jesuit. I was ready for it. Again, it was 2019, and some things, they changed their idea, they changed their plan. So February was my first conversations with Wheeling, and then I didn't get on campus for an interview until summer. So the job ended up coming posted. It was a vice president of student services, and 2019 was also when the institution declared financial exigency, mass exodus of students. So I knew that it was a risk, but there was two ways for me to look at it. If I started at Wheeling, I was either going to be part of something great or part of something bad. I had more confidence in myself and the leadership to be part of something good. So I took the job. It was the logical next step for me. I wanted the responsibility and see what I was capable of. I'm getting up there, and I know that
old timer.
Old timer.
Getting up there, like you were born in the Stone Age. Just because you were born when they still had payphones doesn't mean.
Right, payphones had to make sure I have a quarter around. Before cell phones, we still had MySpace.
1-800-COLLECT.
Right, I did. Listen, my first couple of years of college, we had to have a calling card. Okay. So, but I knew that it was logical for me to go.
Yeah.
So I met with the people at Wheeling, and then I went, and I think people questioned, and Jerry was, and everyone at Bethany was very supportive of the move, getting me along the way, if I needed anything, and you're at a place for any amount of time, you get connected to people and to places. And I was very connected to the people at Bethany. I liked Bethany as a community. I lived there on campus, and then for a small time I lived in town in one of the townhouses. I'd go to Chambers in the morning and get my breakfast sandwich. My husband loved their breakfast sandwiches. I would take my dog for a walk. You see the people, you get involved in the community. And I'd always liked small town USA. I'm a small town kid. I was a small town college kid. I never wanted anything big. So, leaving those people that I had been with for 6 years, I mean, Mickey was like a second mom to me, a friend, and Sam the same, and Kristen Ewing was my graduate assistant at the time. And I had known Kristen as a student, and then I had the opportunity to pull her back in and work with her. And it was hard to call her because we had a good personal and professional relationship. It was summer. I was taking this job in August, which is the worst time for anyone in higher ed to switch jobs and to leave a position vacant to go to a new institution that is already going through change to build something down there. So when I called Kristen and let her know, she wasn't even here. She was in Florida. So it was a difficult phone call, and there were some tears on both ends because of that personal and professional relationship that she was going to have a new boss. But it also gave the ability, again, for Sam. I knew that Sam, same as me, he's younger than me. Sam wanted that next step as to like something new. He had been in student activities for a while, wanted something new, and I knew that he could. Sam's smart. We know Sam's smart. If Sam wants to put his mind to something, he's going to do it. So he wanted to take a stab at residence life. Again, successful, same thing. Student activities, residence life, now assistant dean. It just proves that, again, a pat on the back to Jerry for allowing us to be able to kind of move and grow for both of us. He let me do it, but it wasn't like he let us. We worked hard to show our skills to be able to get to that next level. And, I was there with Dr. Miller. We had lunch with Dr. Miller all the time. He was a great person to talk with, both good, love his social media presence. It was always great to see him. And then we got Dr. Rodenberg. I had the opportunity to meet her before she started. She was just a great individual and had a caring heart and knew what Bethany needed, and we had the opportunity to get her there. And Bethany had its struggles. We know that. Every institution have its struggles.
Well, and look at it now. I mean, every school, big, smaller, and different, are struggling up and down and across the country. So right. And it's hard. COVID has to do with that. Numbers are down, enrollment numbers are down. People are pushing the trade, which is great. But for me, I'm obviously going to push higher ed 4-year, but for those that go to the trade, that's great. And that brings up my final question for you. So you are the guy, you're a guy at Wheeling, you're vice president. Why Wheeling? If you're talking to a potential student for next year or the winter time, if somebody wants to transfer in, why would they want to come to Wheeling?
To me, Wheeling has developed itself now to kind of be this small. Jesuit was big and it had a different kind of feel than what Wheeling is now. That same dedication to students and the same dedication to a good religious education is still there. We are diocesan sponsored. We are Catholic in our mission. We really want our students to be leaders, and we want them to grow personally, professionally, spiritually, athletically, whatever way. And Wheeling has really developed this family feel. I have a great team that I work with. I have a great president who allows me to work with this team, but she's also very supportive, and she is a very involved president in a good way. The students know that they can talk to her, and then she can help get them to what they need to. I always say that I talk to her more sometimes than I talk to my husband or my family. But again, we have great communication because we know what we want to build. We know that, 2019 was a hard hit for Wheeling, but we got hit with financial exigency. Then we had COVID, we had layoffs. We have struggled, but we are still succeeding. We are still getting our numbers. We are at like 250 deposits. So we've got students coming. We are succeeding athletically. Our teams, Division II. We just had kids competing nationally at nationals for track. Our volleyball team is consistent, always national champions, always MEC champions. Our football team, who has not been around for very long, we had one of the best homecoming games. And it was, listen, I love West Liberty. I love Wheeling University. Our homecoming game was against West Liberty. So I'm at Wheeling. My heart is with Wheeling right now. A piece of it will always be at West Liberty. When we went into overtime, the president and I were down on the field, on the track, and we beat them in overtime. I mean, I get chills thinking about it. And I'm not a football person. I couldn't tell you what a first down is, any of that, but I knew how our students felt in that moment was probably one of the greatest things. And having them have those struggles, having to deal with COVID, winning their homecoming game against a rival, storm the field, everyone out there, it was just a great feeling. And it kind of really cemented that I was meant to be there. I felt at home there, and it was great for me. So if I was sit here to give an elevator pitch for Wheeling University, it's a place for you to find yourself. It's a place for you to become part of our family, and it will stick with you until graduation and then after.
All right, Andrew. Well, thank you very much for taking time.
Happy to be here.
It's been a couple long time, I guess I should say, since we had an opportunity to talk to each other. For those of you at home that are watching, if you just joined us, this is Andrew Lewis. Go back to the beginning. You should watch the whole thing, or none of this will make sense. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Anchor. That's where you can find listening to us. You can also keep up on social media with Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. It's at DingoTalk, except for the Instagram page. It's Dingo_talk. But I am Carlo Guadagnino. That's Andrew Lewis. This has been DingoTalk, and we will see you next week, Chuckleheads.
You wanna know by now. You wanna know by now. You wanna know.